Hello and welcome to a buildingSMART webinar. This webinar is hosted by the buildingSMART Regulatory Room and is part of a series of open house sessions planned to occur in between the biannual buildingSMART summits. Thank you for joining. My name is Sheila Karailam and I will be your moderator today. Today's webinar is titled Towards Automated Regulatory Compliance in the EU. Our speakers are Nicholas Nisbet, Director at AEC3 Limited, Rita Lavica from the Accord Project, Francesco Noardo from the Czech Project, and Ignacio Rincon from the DigiChex Project. This webinar is scheduled to last 1 to 1.5 hours with a short Q&A at the end. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available in due course. Before I hand over to our speakers, I would like to remind you that your lines will remain muted for the duration of the presentations. If you have any questions or wish to make comments, please use the chat function located within your control panel. I would also like to bring your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent, and standards that are developed do not favour any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct, which is on the screen now. And on that note, I will hand over to Nick.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Really delighted to have the opportunity to help present three significant EU research projects. Each one will introduce the project, introduce themselves and the project and the members and some of the focuses. The projects haven't been running that long, and so we're not looking for solutions today. This webinar is being hosted by the buildingSMART International Regulatory Room, which is an open forum for those people who are interested in the relationship between open standards for building and infrastructure information and the regulatory and requirements process. We have two of these open, as Sheila said, we have two of these open houses a year with completely unrestricted access, and we meet twice a year with the summits where we identify projects that we think will contribute to the overall agenda. And currently we have a project to produce guidance to help regulators understand Open BIM and how Open BIM can help the regulatory process. And we have a more technical project, which is looking at regulatory information requirements. Are the common information requirements across different regulatory regimes that therefore could be part of the overall buildingSMART standards, the IFC and the data dictionary and so on. So I think that's probably enough introduction. As Sheila said, please use the chat to ask questions. Please, unless you, keep your questions general so that all the speakers have a chance to respond and so on. I think that will make for a more interesting session. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Rita, who's going to tell us about the Accord project.
Thank you, Nick. Let me share my screen. All right, I have to ask, is it now okay for you?
Yes.
Perfect. So, hello everyone, I am Rita Lavica, a senior scientist at VTT, Technical Research Center of Finland, and I have the great pleasure to be here and present you the Accord Horizon Europe project. which has started actually last September. So we have run like 5 months already, and we will run altogether 3 months. And we have a budget around 5 million euros. And Accord comes from the words automated compliance checks for construction, renovation, or demolition works. First, something about the background. So it is about this twin transition, meaning the green and digital part. Looking at the green part, there's big EU Green Deal goals, clean and circular economy, and building and renovating in a resource efficient way. And then there's this blue part, so digital part. All kinds of digital initiatives are coming at the moment. We have European Data Strategy, Open Data Directive, various kinds of data spaces are being developed currently. This is a sort of a kind of a small maturity roadmap towards digital building permit processes. And currently, as many of you know, many countries are still at this manual phase. Let's say data is exchanged through emails or PDF-based exchange. And Accord tries to boost this digitalization part and automation part. And with digital, we mean using more open BIM, IFC, reusing more public data, using 3D for visualization and or other analyses. And then this automation part is perhaps the most advanced, and there we would need more interoperability between information systems and using more open standards. And perhaps we will also have machine readable or machine interpretable regulations in the future. So this is the big picture. This is Accord's vision. So we think that building permit processes should be transparent and resource efficient for both the building permit applicants and the authorities involved. And for that to happen, we think that there should be a single user interface that connects these two parties. And this kind of single user interface would also allow all kinds of automatic compliance check services, calculations for CO2 emissions, simulations, and analysis. So this is our vision, and to enable this, we need to have machine readable rules. We need microservices to enable this all. But moving on, what we expect from our project, we have started to build our semantic framework for European digital building permit processes. We will formalize a permit and compliance process for the European countries and integrate already existing microservices. And all these big results we will validate in real life projects. We have 5 demonstration countries. Finland and Estonia are looking collaboratively environmental compliance checking. Well, we will also focus on accessibility issues, but this is the big thing that is coming in Finland and Estonia. Germany will focus on 3 use cases. One is land use permitting. Then there's green building certification, architectural design compliance in the context of industrialized timber housing. UK will look at structural integrity of steel modular house components, so they will look at certain Euro codes. And then finally, Spain will look at urban regulations. And finally, we will provide suggestions for digitalizing these building permit processes and provide examples for businesses and business models using Open BIM. About our project consortium, it consists of 21 organizations. We have 8 research organizations, so both research and universities. 6 companies, you probably know this, perhaps Solibri is familiar to you. Cloud Permit provides the Finnish building permit system currently for many municipalities. Future Insight provides the same kind of service in Estonia, and then we have some other players as well, associations. So as you can see, buildingSMART is one of our partners. We have cities and one ministry from Estonia. So quite a large group of players, but we have really good collaboration already. Then, because I'm from Finland, so I know best what's happening in Finland, so I thought I could share some news from there. So we are currently reforming our Land Use and Building Act. And if everything goes well, starting next year, we will have a new construction/building act. And that will require this kind of a BIM-based building permit. And for that, we have been developing national IFC requirements, which already exist. And the new act will also require LCA assessment. And for that, we have national requirements for carbon dioxide calculation, and we have national emission databases for both buildings and infrastructure. And we are now looking for building CO2 limit values. So they will also come later on. At the same time, we are also developing our digital built environment. So we have had a big R&D project that has looked at interoperability through information harmonization. So currently we have a national information model for zoning plans and building permits. And we also have national logical data model, vocabularies and enumerations. And if everything goes well, starting next year, we will also have a new built environment information system, and there will be all construction permit decisions. So this is where we are now. But as we all know, the devil is in the detail, and what will Accord really do? So when we have looked at building permitting, so probably you all know that it's a really complex and wide topic. And in this project, we try to combine built environment semantic modeling, digitization of construction regulations, BIM-based building permitting, and then automated code checking. So you can see that it's not perhaps the most easiest thing to do. When we look at the stakeholders involved and their needs, we can see that there's various needs. And if we look at permit applicants, so they need, of course, BIM authoring tools, they need training, but they also need structured requirements, so guidelines for doing modeling for building permit processes. Building control authorities, they need BIM training, they need tools to check compliance, and they need common checking procedures for doing this. Then looking at software providers, they need guidelines to implement IFC requirements, and they need harmonized requirements, perhaps using buildingSMART's information delivery specification to create scalable compliance checking services. And then legislators, they need also methods and tools to make regulations machine readable, or perhaps there will be new business that will do that for them. And then, of course, limit values. Currently, we have a survey open, so we are kindly asking all that can please help us to collect your views on building permitting, what should be done, how should that be done, what are the benefits, what are the barriers. So please answer our survey. It's still open for, let's see, at least 1 week, and let us know if you need more time. And you can see that there's various languages that you can use for answering. So thank you already. And we have started modeling the current building permit processes in our 5 demonstration countries. And after this work, we start modeling the harmonized building permit process for Europe. And that should be based on BIM, machine readable regulations and have these automated compliance checking microservices. Then I also wanted to say a few words about this automation. So what is it? And this is a simplified, let's say, technical concept for doing it. So we start with BIM, with the IFC model. You basically validate your model, you enrich that one, and then you have an enriched BIM. And then we have paper-based regulations. We do some kind of a translation process for those and get machine readable rules. And the idea is to match these two somehow and then get this automated compliance checking. But in reality, the world is not that simple. So don't be scared, but I will show you now Accord's technical framework just to explain what we are really doing in this project. So we are exploring current data dictionaries from buildingSMART, from OGC, looking at how they can be used in digital building permitting. We are looking at ontologies. There are quite many of those, how to use them in our work on creating a rule formalization tool that allows this translation of regulation to rules. And we are also kind of currently choosing the right rule language for that. So those kind of technical details, and also experimenting with AI, so natural language processing, to check whether we can extract from PDF those rules. And in the end, we will create a rule set database for software providers, so that is easier to use these rules in those softwares. And we are also developing APIs to integrate already existing services for building permitting. So that's about the technical details. And finally, I wanted to show that there's a lot of networks and forums existing in this area, and it would be really nice to see you all here in these events and get to know you and learn more about how you see that this building permitting should be further developed. And I encourage you all to join next year in September. There will be World Digital Built Environment Summit in Tallinn and Helsinki. So please come there. There will be a panel session on digital building permitting. Then there's this European Commission's High-Level Construction Forum, EU Net for DPP, and our sister projects that you will learn about today. And of course, it's really nice to be here in your regulatory room. So thank you for that. And this was actually all that I wanted to say for now, and looking for your comments and questions in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. That was very clear. And it really nice to see the connections. Do put the link for your survey into the chat and then people can pick it up.
Yes, thank you. I will do that.
Okay. Let's go straight on to Francesca, who will tell us about the Czech project.
Thank you, Nick. So let's share my screen. I cannot share. Rita, maybe can you stop sharing, please?
Oh, sorry. Yes, now you should be able.
Okay, thank you. Let's try. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Francesca Noardo. I work at the Open Geospatial Consortium as a researcher and a project management manager. And together with Jan Tinsdotter from the TU Delft, I am coordinating the Czech project, which I will introduce you today. So I will tell something about the project and the concept behind it, and then present you some of the initial results and the plans, especially for developing this toolkit. The project is an Horizon Europe project under the same code and accord. The name is the Change Toolkit for Digital Building Permit. So I will explain later what is the toolkit that we are aiming and planning to provide. The budget is approximately 5 million euros for the 3 years. It has started in October last year, so 2022 just started, and it will run until September 2025. As you can see, we are 19 partners, so quite a huge consortium, and its characteristics is that it's rather multidisciplinary and intersectoral, as it's necessary for this kind of project, of problem, of issue that we are trying to tackle as the digitalization of building permit. This is the value chain of the project, so you can see more or less what is the role of each partner within that, and you can also see what is the approach of check. So it's rather bottom-up. We'll start from collecting the requirements and getting the needs of the municipalities that we have in the consortium, which are Ascoli Piceno in Italy, Lisbon and Villanova de Gaia in Portugal, and Prague and the Czech Republic. And from these requirements, we'll extract what are the needs according to the regulations to be checked, and therefore what are the BIM data requirements, the GIS data requirements, and software components. We'll go through standardization, so we are aiming at a scalable approach, and therefore open standards will be a critical part of the project, so the use of open standards and related tools and provided tools for fostering a fair approach. We'll also provide some education and training to support the transition of officers and of the world of practice as well towards the new way of making building permits, of giving building permits. And of course, we'll develop the process software and analysis software that will finally implement the solutions. And all of these will be part of our digital building permit toolkit. Last phase of the project will be going back to the municipalities and ask them to demonstrate it that will happen in the last year of the project. This is the concept behind the Czech project. So we have 5 objectives. First is to demonstrate a novel, a digital process for building permits. So we are working on this as a first basic step. Second is interoperability, and interoperability which goes through the use of standards for managing both the BIM and GIS data, but also it also deals with the integration and conversion between BIM and GIS, since we need both kind of representation in many cases for checking some kinds of regulations, especially. Third objective is about upskilling and reskilling and training the actors and the stakeholders that needs to use later these tools and these solutions, and has to change their current way of working. So they need some support with respect to that. Fourth objective is about technology. It's maybe not the most challenging because a lot of tools are already there, but of course it is necessary to align the technology with the data requirements and provide these technological tools in an interoperable way. They need to be consistent with some kind of platform and provided as microservices in a way that makes them effective, interoperable, and flexible enough in order to be used by everyone for this kind of application. And finally, yeah, as I was saying, we want to demonstrate scalability. We want to provide flexible, scalable, and reusable solutions. So now I'm going into more details. First of all, for the process digitalization, we'll first work on a new process map. And this is a work which is ongoing. I show you in the next slide. Based on this, we'll provide a suitable process management platform. And in the project, there will be also some tools developed that will help concretely the municipalities to change, so to go through the transition from the current use of analog tools and analog data towards some more digital applications and processes and building permitting. At the moment, from Know4 Italia is working on this, and they have mapped all the process mapped from the 4 municipalities which are in our consortium, and I have represented them in these maps. Next steps will be to compare the different maps and harmonize them and see how this can be the starting point for a to-be process map, which is not too much far from what is currently happening in the municipalities, and therefore is more it's easier to be uptaken later. We can also underline in this way what are the needs, what are the steps to be considered, and how to this can be a suitable input later to the development of the platform to manage the building permit. Besides the 4 municipalities that we have in the consortium, we are also considering involving some more stakeholders, so municipalities, but also designers and maybe citizens, any other stakeholders interested in following our developments and contributing with their input and feedback to the Czech development. And this is the community of practice. The call for this is open, and from the website you can access and participate if you want. In addition, we are also looking at the literature review, because there are many recent works on the process maps for digital building permits, which are very relevant, and therefore we want to integrate those and not to neglect them within our process maps and in the solutions that we will provide. Second is about interoperability. So this is related to the data, the standardization of data, and the data requirement provision. They will use mainly OGC standards and, of course, buildingSMART standards. So first IFC, and also all the tools and standards protocols that are provided by buildingSMART, and open standards will be, of course, critical to support the interoperability of the tools and therefore their scalability. And a relevant part will also be dedicated to the conversion of geo and BIM. But here, what is already ongoing is the definition of the regulatory information requirements. So we have started by analyzing the regulations. We have asked the municipalities to identify and provide some relevant building codes and regulatory requirements based on their ideas of what is the most strategic rules and what are their priorities to optimize the process and to have the most advantage of the digital building permits, of course. And we classified it. This work was done by the University of Minho and together with the University of Brescia, also in the next steps. The codes were analyzed, some rules were detected, and classified according to the type of rule, and each of them were translated into an algorithm. And these are supposed to become the building blocks of some machine interpretable code or regulation later. The algorithms, in turn, will require some specific parameters that will be combined properly into the code, and they will need to be retrieved from the input data. So this will become part of the data requirements after being mapped to the open standards, so CityGML and IFC. And the algorithms will then be combined together in order to build each rule in a machine-readable format. The information requirements will then be defined according to the exchange information requirement template, associating domain-specific and project-specific object types, and the related properties. Some preliminary set of information requirements, you can see it in the slides. So it's related to applicability, to the information type, data type, conditions, dependencies, and so on. And these were detected within the regulation text by a markup methodology using the RAISE approach. In addition to this, we'll need to consider, of course, the geometry needs, so including level of detail, precision, accuracy, and so on. Besides that, the following part of the project is about reskilling and upskilling. So currently we are building a digital building permit knowledge base and a glossary, because since we have such a diversity in the consortium, but not only in the consortium, in the wider community related to the digital building permits, we need to understand each other properly, and therefore we need to have a proper glossary to be sure that we are talking about the same thing. And later during the project, we'll also provide some courses and some training materials, and these will be of two kinds. One part of them will be practice oriented, so really some tutorials for helping people in practice to use our solutions and to understand them and to apply them into their own practice day by day. And another one will be more intended for universities and students, and it will be more technical scientific training. About the technologies, we have three main kinds of technological tools that will be developed. First is about the platform to manage all the process, and these will need to be flexible and interoperable, so that will be the main challenge for the platform provided. And then we have the two kinds of checking software. One of them is using CityGML, so 3D city models, for checking the regulations. And the other kind of checker will be based on IFC. So this will receive the machine readable rules and will help also shaping the language in which these machine readable rules have to be written. And they will be able to automate and support the checking of regulations based on those kinds of data. What will be essential for the technological part of the check development is that everything will be provided as a microservice and connected through APIs described through an open API approach, and the architecture will be in this way as modular and as flexible as possible, so that each part could be substituted by other similar tools, for example, if other needs are there by each municipality. This is an example of what Virtual City Systems is developing for checking some of the regulations based on the 3D city model. So here you can see an example of the maximum height checking. Finally, we want scalability. So we'll use the feedback and input from our municipalities, but also we want to provide some best practice documents, some alignment and some collaboration with the open standards and European framework and the other communities and networks. We want to provide this open API-based architecture and modular architecture for the software that we will provide. And to further strengthen it, indeed, we are recruiting the Czech community of practice. So if you want to have a look at the website and you would like to join, please, you are welcome, and we are here to answer your questions as well. So to conclude, this is our in progress work. So from the ASIS process maps, we are defining the 2P process maps. The rules are being classified and interpreted in order to support the provision of machine-readable rules and the definition of some level of information needs for the data. Glossary is under development, user requirements are being collected, and software development initiated. And finally, the community of practice is being recruited. Okay, as a future work, I can just say digitalization of building permit to summarize all which is missing. But yeah, I hope to share with you in the next months and years more details and more detailed developments and the results. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Francesca. That was very interesting. And do put any links you want into the chat so that people can pick them up straight away. And meanwhile, I'd like to go on to Ignacio, who's going to update us on the DigiChecks project.
Hi everyone, just let me know when you see my screen.
Yes, can we go full screen? Super,
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
all good.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation for this presentation. My name is Ignacio Rincon-Goya. I'm a technical coordinator for the DigiCheck project. I work for FCC Construction Company as a digital manager and BIM manager in a big infrastructure project in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. But at the same time, I'm a technical coordinator for the DigiCheck project. As our colleagues, we are part of the original project, 5 million project for the next 3 years, and we have started our project back in July. We had our kickoff meeting, so a couple of months earlier than them. So my intention today is to explain basic or at least introduction to our DigiCheck project and which are our main goals. So why are we doing this project, or why our DigiCheck Accord, DigiChecks and checks are doing those projects? Why is needed this kind of development or tools? Well, I think it's known by everyone in this room that construction industry still behind other industries in the digitalization, in the implementation of technology. What I want to show in this is a slide. Of course, it's very known by everyone, but this image or this chart is from 2015, but we still seeing a gap on the industry. It's not that much that people, they are not using the technology on their own processes, but it's more like as a whole, as an industry, we do not have this implementation of technologies in the processes, and this project is a huge opportunity to implement it, to improve in many ways the way we develop our projects. So in that sense, Europe, they know about this, and there are some projects that it has been developed in the last years. One is Gaia X, for instance, is the next generation of data infrastructure to interchange information between different stakeholders in a safe and transparent manner. We have also an international data space where, well, it's a standard worldwide to guarantee the transmission of data between point A and point B, A and B in different industries. Or we have, for instance, the Inspire infrastructure that is like a geographic information system for European countries to interchange information, geographic information between different European countries. So these are 3 examples. There are more, of course, in this idea or this path to digitalize the industry. On that sense, European Union, they present in 2018 the Horizon project, and one of the most important projects that DigiCheck is the starting point for us is the DigiPlace project, that they define a reference architecture framework. So they define the basis where we should develop our project, our system. So this is our starting point. And based on that, we made a proposal 2 years ago on July. And we made our proposal DigiCheck to develop or to create and demonstrate a digital framework that allows interoperability and communication between platforms based on technology and international initiatives to facilitate the management of construction permits, including compliance check. The consortium is led or coordinated by FCC Construction Company, but we have 13 plus FCC parties involved. Companies from Spain, from France, Belgium, Netherlands, Austria. Yes, I'm not missing anyone. And we are a consortium, as I mentioned, led by FCC. On our kickoff meeting, we have defined also in our proposal, but we develop our principles, or we define our principles for the proposal, and it's based on 4 principles. The first one, it's taking the principles from DigiPlace. We keep on that sense that we are thinking in a framework that is a federated ecosystem, and we are moving away from a concept of centralization or monolithic application. The principle number 2 is the framework allows a modular and a scalable approach. That it's for 2 main reasons. One is because not all the countries, municipalities, or cities around Europe, they have the same system, they have the same way of working, or they have the same scale. So our ecosystem should be modular and flexible enough to adapt to the different ways of working or the different sizes. The second reason is also we want to develop in the next 3 years in 3. I will show afterwards in 3 different pilots, but there are different levels of maturity. So that means that we are going to increase the maturity of the system as we are advancing in the project. Principle number 3 is the framework use shared set conceptual information model ontologies that align with the existing domain ontologies. There are different, let's say, languages in the different countries, and we want to align with a main common ontology. And principle number 4 is data is generated within the framework using formalized, accepted or known international standards. So having said that, the 4 principles, how DigiCheck looks like. Well, we are going to develop the project, and I'm trying to summarize as much as possible in 4 different steps. The first step is we have started in the 4 months of the project. We have analyzed the situation in most of the countries in Europe, and is to define a standard permit ontology, a shared language for permitting. And this language formalizing a permit ontology enables to define the framework to map the data from various different sources. Okay. The second step will be to digitizing permit process. So that means based on a OMG standard, we should provide the option to the final user to define their process, to model their process in our system. That means that we don't want the people change the way of working. For sure, they already have their way of working for years, and we want to be flexible enough that are able to module their process in DigiChecks. Also, if some system or process is being changed after 2 years, they can come back and remodify the model and adapt to the new way of working. Third step is building permit rules. So based for the automated compliance checker, we are providing a module that the municipality or whoever is able to define some rules for verification of validation, yes or not, or even, of course, more complexity, as we have shown in the other proposal, to check the different rules based on 3D models, based on urban rules or different kind of norms or rules based on the, let's say, in the industry. Step number 4 is the integration of previous step into permit. Also, something we want to avoid is everyone in the industry, or the stakeholders, they modify their platform or they need to move to another platform to work in DigiCheck. What we want to do is to develop some kind of API that it could be embedded or integrated on their processes or in their systems. So it's quite easy for them to, let's say, send in a way the information to DigiCheck without moving the platform. On the right side, we can see a scheme, how we interpret it. This is a simplified idea of the system. We see on the gray layer all the existing already related to, of course, European regulation, the standard architectures that already exist, like IDSA, Spark, GAIA-X, all the platforms or infrastructure already existing on the system that we are going to use to develop DigiChecks, and system and technology, that the technology layer that we are going to use to develop our system. In the blue layer, we are seeing our proposal. So that means the platform for platforms is the DigiCheck itself to be connected through to others. I will explain in a further slide how it looks like. The second, it will be the application layer. So we will have different modules that you will be able to do different things in the data that you are extracting or you are sending. And the final layer will be the API to connect to the existing platform that you use. And the final layer, the orange one, will be the front end for the final users. So it's the portal to access the DigiCheck platform. Our final objective or ambition, well, is, as I mentioned already, but ultimate objective of the solution is to provide flexibility, easy to use, and efficiency to the permit validation. We have found out, and also based on our experience, that the most common barrier for implementation of technology is the people that are not used to use. They are hard to learn the new ways. So we want to develop something very easy to use and that it doesn't change really much the way they have right now to work. As I mentioned before, regardless of the country, region, or municipality, we want to develop something easy to interoperability with the tools they commonly use in construction, and that it does not imply a change in the process. Okay, so we want to implement new forms of exchanging information. Something when I was mentioning before also, well, I will explain in the next slide. And finally, all this DigiCheck will be demonstrated in 3 pilot projects. That will be one in Spain, one in the UK, in Wales, and one in Austria. So the key idea of DigiCheck, I'm going to try to explain in this slide. What we see in the image is the ecosystem of the construction industry, different actors. So we identify different actors, A, B, and C. And we have developed this permit ontology, digitization of permit process, building permit rules, and the APIs. And we want to offer the option from different actors of the system to share data from A to B. Could be through the 3D model, through the different kind of formats, but the sense is to avoid the centralization, to be able to connect different dots from the ecosystem. Okay, of course, in the middle part will be a broker service in between that could validate that transmission of the information. And on the right side, we are seeing the different models where, and it will be more, of course, but some of the modules that we are providing to the final user that can be used in this transaction. We have the process modeling. So as I mentioned before, the municipality or whoever is working in the process, he's able to model the process on G standard, of course. Second model could be the compliance check based on BRMS, Business Road Management System, or IA base on the close future. We also have, of course, a geometry engine, could be a digital twin, VR visualization, to be able to visualize all these data that we are sharing, or to validate on a 3D model the process that has to be validated. And of course, connector to data sources to existing information as Cadastre or Inspire. And of course, we are thinking in additional models that could be added to the proposal of it. So finally, for the validation of compliance check, it's the very simplified way to explain. We have a requirement, a subject, a compliance that has to be done, and a verification, yes or not, if it's compliant with what was defined. So on the requirement subject side, we have the actor in process, could be authority, owner, general contractor, subcontractor, designer, consultant, or others. What I mean is, we are thinking in the development of DigiCheck not as a tool or platform just for authorities. It's through the ecosystem. So if a main contractor wants to validate some kind of information with the subcontractor, could be used also for this validation between these two stakeholders. Of course, for the authority A or B or C, whoever it is, he can use the complete process to validate any kind of information through our system. Actual ecosystem, we have CDEs, digital tools, of course there are more, or kind of formats could be paper-based that we will digitalize, PDF, Excel, and this is also related to the level of maturity that we are thinking about. Verification could be automate or manual, nothing new, and compliance information compression processing between requirements. So we need to define the requirements and we need to identify the validation, yes or not, of this requirement predefined previously. The impact we are expecting, well, to be honest, we expect the impact is in the complete industry, from public authorities, private owners, construction company, professional, in different ways, of course, but almost to everyone, the impact, I think, will be huge. This is a personal thought, but I think, and I've been working on BIM for many years, more than 10, 15 years. We think we are in a very high level of maturity in terms of BIM or digitalization, but I think, as a colleague mentioned before, still many processes we're still doing by hand, by paper, or hand signature, let's say. And I think it's a huge margin to improve with this kind of projects. As I mentioned, the project is going to be validated in 3 projects in different countries. We have different typology of project. We have an infrastructure project in Wales, in UK. We have a resident project. It's more BIM-based, this development by Realia. It's a construction company in Spain. Company, probably the project will be in Spain. And the third project is from Cree Building, it's in Austria. It's a prefab design based, very advanced, based on BIM, on prefab industrial construction. That's it. Here you have the webpage. We have digicheck.eu, and we have well, our coordinator Elizabeth, or our pilot coordinator Juan Ramon Mena. So please contact us anytime, or check our website or LinkedIn for any additional questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ignacio. That was very good. I'm going to rewind the chat now and call out some questions. And then I think people are adding questions as even as we speak. Francesca and Rita do, yep, thank you. Okay, so the first question in the chat from Frank Doherty asks if any of the projects have contacted the Consortium of European Building Control. I've done a presentation on the UK project DECOM, which some of you were referenced, and some of the consequences of that. But have any of you three made that connection with the group?
Well, at least from my point of view, sorry, I only now learned about this community, so I was just checking that one. And thank you for that. So we will take a deeper look at it.
Yes, they have an annual conference. I was due to attend the one in Estonia, I think it was, or Latvia. But yeah, stuff got in the way, COVID and so on. But I think there are some important messages and conversations to be had with that group. It's quite a high-level group, and it'd be really good to continue to alert them to the potential of digitization and some of the choices. So I hope I can help make that link if people want to take that further.
Thank you.
Will be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you're happy to, all three presenters, please PDF your presentations and send them to Sheila, and she will make sure that anyone who asks for them gets them, and we'll give you the list of who's interested. That's probably the best way of doing it. And then Vitali has asked collectively, are you building software for the IFC checkers from scratch, or building on existing tools? And perhaps more challengingly, how available will the tools you make be? Is this commercial or pre-commercial, or is it intended to be free resources? These are things that in EU projects tend to come at the end in the exploitation section, but I'd be interested in if each of you could answer. Rita?
Yes, in Accord, we are building some open access software. For example, the tool that I mentioned that will take PDFs and make them and try to fetch something and make it machine readable rules. So that tool will be open access, but then concerning those microservices for compliance checking. So unfortunately, they will be market-based solutions already existing, and we are only creating APIs. Of course, those APIs will be available to all of you, but not the services. So, yeah. Francesca, okay. You can continue.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in our consortium, we have different software companies adopting different kinds of approaches. So many software will not build from scratch, but from existing software, like the Virtual City Systems one, the SciPy one, and then we have Synapse and RDF. And the DI roots as well. So some of them are, of course, building on what is already existing. And the final solutions will be provided according to the different policies of the companies, in part open source, in part they will be commercial software, also in part it will be desktop, and in part web-based. So we are also having are experimenting at diversity in what we will provide. Some open source software will be anyway provided as well, and both for geo and beam conversion, and probably also something for the checks, but I'm not 100% sure. We'll also have to define the last details. And some parts of it will be though make available for free, even if in some cases the code could not be shared, but for example, some solutions could be commercial for municipalities, but they can be made available for free for designers in order them to use the same tool before the submission to check their own design. So yeah, there will be several kinds of approaches to that.
Okay.
Not very different from what they have explained already. There is a lot of conversation still inside the consortium about which way. I think one of our main goals, it's independent from the development of the tool, is to digitalization of the network or the industry. So I think one of the main ways is at least a percentage of the platform or the system to be open source or available to everyone. So that is a way to facilitate the people to get on board, and of course to get the full experience or full tools, etc. There is some kind of commercial agreement. I don't know, it's through European Union, through the authorities. It's many things to be defined.
Yeah, and sorry, I have not. I have to add that yeah, in our case as well, the APIs will be open, and all the documentation about the software as well.
And may I add that even though we are integrating commercial software, so in Finland we have approximately 270 municipalities, and 70% of those are already using a cloud-based service for kind of a digital building permit, so you can input your PDFs and some of, we have actually 2 services, and they are being developed in the way that you can also put your IFC file there in the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the obvious comment would be that DCOM has proposed a set of APIs. If we end up with 4 sets of APIs, then that would be disappointing for the industry. So perhaps should be some pressure to coordinate and converge, because that's too many different APIs. Could undermine the good intentions. There's a question here from Ralph Montague in Ireland, asking if anyone would like to present at the International BIM Coordinator Summit in September. I'll leave each of you to decide for yourselves whether you want to do that. I think, speaking more generally, and I can look back over 20 years of work on digitization of permit processes. The level of interest in the last couple of years, maybe 3 years, has really shot up amongst all sectors, among designers, among some regulators, and among clients. And so I'm sure there will be lots of pull to, people will continue to be very interested in the work that's going on. I'll now scroll down a little bit more. Oh, another one, yes. The regulatory room will be meeting as part of the buildingSMART International Summit, where again, there are reasons to, opportunities to discuss regulatory compliance. There's a question from Eilif in Norway. Do the projects have collaboration with the digitization of other public authorities like tax, health, social services, and other industries like finance, banking, legal informatics, and so on? And perhaps I'll top that question with a thought that crossed me about privacy and transparency as well. How are these going to be managed? There is a public interest in building and infrastructure development. There's also a privacy interest and so on. So let's just take those general questions and say, Rita, do you want to say anything about those?
So a lot of things.
Yeah.
Where should I start? So of course, those are really important topics. And as I said, we are building this new build environment information system in Finland, and those privacy issues, they are really keen. And we are, of course, following that development work very closely. And there will be issues like this tax and social services and all those kind of things linked, but not specifically finance or banking. Of course, as we are looking at checking environmental regulations, so we need to follow EU taxonomy quite closely and all related topics, but yeah, so.
Okay, Francesca?
Yeah, we are aware of the need to relate to such domains at a point. It's rather challenging, so we'll probably let the achievement of that for the next projects, but in a way we are trying to address it as much as possible by collecting the requirements from municipalities about for example, the needs for privacy, for GDPR, for relation to other services, in a way that we can already design our platform so that it will be ready to address them more properly later.
Yeah, and
on our case, we do not have direct collaboration with other industries, but as I start my presentation, I think some other industries, they are way ahead. And construction, I think, is a very good reference. And of course, we have looked at them for some developments or some things, at least the way they're doing and which things we can learn from them. But we do not have direct contact with them. They are involved.
okay.
I think we should, how do you say in English? We should constrain the scope, because otherwise it could be 20 years just happening.
Opposite scope limitation control. Yeah, there's one of your colleagues has made that there is a PR protection, and I think, yeah, I mentioned transparency, that like input and oversight of this, which is another challenge, is of public interest. An individual apartment isn't an issue. Just rewinding, there's a question about whether people have looked at the Singapore checking. The regulatory room likes to keep a database for the or a collection. Let's not exaggerate, of the different developments, and has been round the cycle twice. I work the e-plan check in around 2000. In your are you conducting reviews of current state of the art? Rita?
Do you mean like theoretically, like looking at articles, or because we have that survey, and that is one part for collecting information of this kind of industry view, market view on building permitting.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an academic angle on this, that there is an extensive literature, not all of it good.
Yes, yes, we are, but from specific perspectives, like looking at those ontologies and rule languages and certain issues, but also when we are building our online learning material, then we will also look at what is happening. And you probably know Thomas Peets from UK, so he has written about this topic a lot. So we have been reading his articles and some of those related ones.
Commercial and academic.
Yes, both are needed.
Yeah, and we are not doing it directly within the project, well, except for the initial parts of the tasks, where of course we have a look at what's going on and the new literature to adjust our methodology properly, but we had some experiences, and we wrote a paper published last year with a wide part of our consortium on a big state of play on digital building permit, and other partners are still working on another paper about more focus on the processes, and yeah, and this kind of practice and stakeholders. So all which is concerning the process of building permits in Europe and beyond, and they are usually under the umbrella of the UNET for DBP.
Good. Okay, Ignacio, anything?
I don't think I have any additional to add. I think we are in the same line as our colleagues.
Good. Okay. The last, oh, sorry, there's a comment that co-class classification system in the BSDD is needed. I think that's a tip of an iceberg of classification across Europe and internationally, and the way that the specific needs of regulations, regulations want to know if a corridor is a corridor, they want to know if a seating area is a seating area, and those semantics are going to be challenging. So I don't think co-class is the only candidate. So, but I think the final question is perhaps the most challenging, which we can finish up on. Meant that from Lennart that there are 270 municipalities in Finland, a far larger number in the UK. How are you going to make it all scalable, especially in situations where some local authorities can make their own regulations and so on? What are the economics and scalability of your approaches? So let's finish with that one. And Rita.
Yeah, let's finish with the really easy task. Yeah, well, that is that is a challenge. I know that in Finland we have some municipalities are actually collaborating on this issue, so they have defined collaborative ways of doing and interpreting codes. So that is one approach, but I don't know if I can say how Accord will really solve this issue, but that is an issue and we need to dig deeper into that. But there has to be a discussion among authorities. It's definitely the way to go.
I mean, I worked with in the US, where there are 3,000 counties and each county can have its own regulatory system. Of course, there are commonalities, but so the numbers do get big very quickly. Francesca.
Well, as I said, we are trying, for example, for the regulations to see what are the small part composing the issues in a way that we can later combine them differently, but with a similar approach. So for the regulations, we are looking at what are the single rules that are recurring in the different regulations, more or less. And if we can convert them to specific rules and algorithms and use only them as much as possible, then of course well, some parts will of course remain not automated. Some issues will remain probably, but that's the approach we are using both for this and both for the process. So we are trying to fragment the process in small parts in a way that each municipality or a country can choose what are the parts which are needed and compose it together with the platform. So they choose the modules, and we hope to not solve, but going towards the solution of scalability in this way. And of course, 270 municipalities are in Finland, but like in Italy, we have like 8,000 and even more in the whole Europe. So it's really, it's a great challenge, and probably the best challenge of these projects.
Okay.
From
Okay.
our side,
And
in that sense, I repeat several times in my presentation, I think the key is to try to not define a way of working, or so you need to follow these rules. One of the things we are doing in the studying of the actual situation is to identify not each step specific for each country, but which are the identified different steps, the kind, not the step itself. So with that, identify and to provide to different municipalities the option to module their system based on different typology of steps, let's call that way. So it converts that much more flexible, and each of the municipalities able to model their system. Of course, the previous question about the codification, there is a challenge. We should have probably our own codification, or probably, and still in conversation, could be each of the municipalities, they should define a data set about their own codification is the system that is going to use on their processes. I don't know.
okay.
Could be one or the other.
In contrast, we see that Germany has 550. Singapore has 1. I remember it well. And Ireland has just 1. So it's an interesting range, but I think it's probably the challenge. I'm going to try and wrap up now. If there are any other questions people want to ask, slip them into the chat quickly. But I'm really, on behalf of our substantial audience, I'd like to thank all 3 of you for coming forward and presenting a project, your projects, even though it is early days. We will invite you back to see how things are going. I've got a bundle of additional questions I'd love to ask about whether the semantic web is reliable and scalable, and how the DCOM project relates to, or can inform what you're doing. I think it was really interesting to see that one of the projects is including infrastructure. The regulation of infrastructure is often very different. Certainly in the UK, we have self-regulating bodies. The Highways Agency doesn't do regulation checks on itself. It does dispensation checking to find out how many dispensations it needs to do what it wants to do. But I think, and we can put alongside the fact that along with regulatory checking, clients, especially larger clients, health bodies, hospitals and so on, have their own extensive client requirements, which are sometimes in conflict with the regulation, but certainly need to be checked. So the scale of this is enormous, but the value is even greater, because the 9-month or 9-week delays that compliance approvals introduce into projects can be very disruptive, and so on. And I also think the other thing that probably needs a mention, because it wasn't mentioned in the chats, was in the presentations, is retrofit, and how are we going to regulate retrofit renovations of existing buildings, which we imagine with the CO2 emergency is going to be an increasing part of the workload, and has a very different set of requirements to new construction. So I think by the time these projects are finished, there might be a ban on new buildings. So we better be careful that we cover renovation as well. I just couple of things. The video presentation will be available, and PDFs will be available if you get in touch with Sheila at regulatory@buildingSMART.org. And there we are, thank you. And we also have a forum, including a regulatory room forum at that address for discussions and raising issues. And lastly, if people have any views on what future open houses should address, what they'd be interested in, then please do put something in the chat or get in touch at that email address. But certainly we will come back to these 3 projects sometime in the near future. So thank you all very much. And thank you for the questions, which I think helped keep our presenters on their toes. And thank you to Sheila and Dan for facilitating the presentation. Thanks very much, and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to present.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye.
Have a nice day.